Welcome, everyone. I am so grateful to have all of you joining me here today. As I said, I think this is a very, very important topic. Upgrade your AI game, how to use AI with purpose and intention. This is our monthly Learn Tourism Talks free webinar, and I hope that you'll consider, if you like today, joining us every month to talk about a wide variety of topics related to travel and tourism, marketing and technology, education and training, and lots of other things. So thank you so much for being here. We've got folks from all around the world, which is always really exciting for me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Benoit. I have been in marketing and technology since 2003, so it's been over 2 decades. And I am not a programmer. I am not a computer science person. I was actually a person who studied writing and communications. I didn't even really know when I was in college that marketing was actually a job, and there was no internet when I was in college. So I want to encourage everyone. It doesn't matter how technical you think you are. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're good at technology. It doesn't matter if you feel comfortable with it or you dislike it. If you think it's fascinating and exciting, or you're pretty hands off and you want to run away from tech. I think no matter where you're coming from, you are part of the artificial intelligence conversation. And that's because AI isn't going to just change the way that we are doing things online. It's literally going to change the way that we live our lives in the coming years and months and weeks. One thing I want to just start off today with is that this is a point in technology where, just like other tech we've seen in the last 20 to 30 years, it is about to rapidly change how we are doing literally everything. So not only are we going to have to be thinking about how this impacts our virtual experience, how it impacts how we promote ourselves online or how we communicate with people across the internet, but it's also literally going to start to impact the world around us. It's going to impact the way we're solving problems. It's going to impact the way that our governments are functioning. It's going to impact the way our laws are written. So that's why I think it's so important that all of us see that we have a place at this table. So I just want to invite you that regardless of how you feel about AI today, you are allowed to love it. You are allowed to hate it. You are allowed to be excited and fascinated. You are allowed to be scared and disturbed. And for me, I feel like I'm living in that space of being open to all of these different things as we look at the future and start to walk into it, right? So again, this isn't a webinar for technical people. This isn't just a webinar for someone who likes AI. This is a webinar for all of us so we can understand what it is, how we can use it better. And I think so we can take leadership in the conversation, whether that's in our industry, whether that's in our community, whatever it is. We need to have opinions, we need to have curiosity, and we need to have a voice. So if you took nothing else away from today, I think that is one of the most important things I want everyone to feel empowered to do. So we don't have time today to get into the ethics of AI, which is a much bigger conversation because of what I just said, right? So ethically speaking, AI has a lot of questions. And as we move forward, I think those questions are going to come up over and over and over. And depending on where you live in the world, there's going to be a thought process around how quickly are our laws catching up to the reality of what we're dealing with. So again, if you're in the US, if you're in India, if you're in Uganda, if you're anywhere else, basically you're going to see that your government is starting to take a stance on this and they're starting to figure out how they want to deploy these tools. They probably have already deployed them in some ways, but there's going to be this sort of catch up game where the legal part, the regulatory part has to happen. So that's a bigger conversation that I want you to be aware of is happening everywhere right now and is incredibly important because, again, AI impacts lots of different things. It impacts the way we're doing money. It impacts the way that we're supporting the environment. It impacts the way that we are doing warfare. Everything is being impacted in some way. But when it comes to how you can be using it in your business or in your organization, or even just to promote yourself and the work that you do, there are a few things that you want to know right out of the gate are important to using these tools responsibly. So first, I just want to mention, be careful with confidential data. This could be things like information about your patients if you work in health and wellness. It could be information about your customers if you're e-commerce and you're mailing them things to their physical address or getting their phone number, all of that sort of stuff. It could be different information you have if you're doing human resources on people on your team. It could be the contracts you write. So just remember, depending on the tools you choose, there's going to be different protections and safety. So a good example of this would be if I'm using Google Workspace or I'm using Microsoft Office 365, there are certain protections built in, right? If I'm using free ChatGPT, not so much. And so what we share with AI tools really has to be based on us understanding what their policies are. So really know what the data policies are for each tool that you're using before you start uploading spreadsheets of what is personal data or sensitive data. Even just email lists to me have to be guarded because if you've promised your, newsletter subscribers that you're not going to sell their information or give it away, then I would be cautious I don't upload those emails into the free version of ChatGPT or Google Gemini, right? Because simply I want to make sure they're not going to do anything with that data. Also, right now, AI can hallucinate, make mistakes, be inaccurate, or sometimes even get a little weird, right? So sometimes they can get jealous. They can start to make up stories to make themselves look better. So AI was built by humans. It seems to have some of the problems human beings actually have. I'm sure that over time we will continue working on those issues, but right now, AI is always creating a draft of whatever you're working on. And you actually have to be the one to quality control that information. So, this is where AI drafts out things. It's helping us create systems, workflows, documents, doing research, but we still have to be quality control professionals at this point in every aspect. So that is going to be something you add to your job. That might actually take time. So while you're getting more efficient on one side, you might actually be spending more time on quality control. So be prepared for that trade off. First party data, again, like I said, has to do with really individual information about your customers, your clients, your donors, whatever it is. So, really think about first party data policies that you already have. How do you store that data? How are you promising your existing customers or donors or fans that you're going to use that data? Make sure your AI isn't doing something that is contradictory to that. And then I think it's really important to be transparent about how you're using AI. And we'll talk about AI policies at the end briefly. If you'd like examples of that, you'll have my email. You can always email me for examples of things like that. And I have a ton to share. But AI policy to me, it's not about writing a certain policy or having it be perfect. I think it should be more like a living document. It should be added to your privacy and security statements on your website. And you should just be transparently letting the people know, how do you use AI? Why do you use it that way? So they're really aware. To start, and again, I see some new folks have joined, so I just want to encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat and to use the Q&A feature as we go along if you have any questions today. And there should be plenty of time for questions, so I will be looking forward to hearing what you have to say. But where I want to start today is, what role does AI really play? I think right now, when we think about leveling up or upgrading the way we're using it, we are realizing we're using it very simplistically, right? We might having it do a task here, a task there. But at the end of the day, what AI can really do is become a creative collaborator. It can become your administrative assistant. It become your human resources support. It can become your operations manager. It is actually a problem solver. It is actually something that can help you communicate better. But at the end of the day, it's only as good as how you train it. So I want us to think of AI as a team member, almost like an intern or a new employee, and that we have to onboard it, we have to train it, we have to teach it, and we have to know that it's going to continuously improve the more that we do that and get better and better at the jobs that we're giving it. So we have to become sort of managers of the AI. We have to be, like I said, the quality control experts, the people that are bringing in the accuracy checks, making sure things are on brand, on tone, and making sure that we protect people's privacy. And hey, Paul. Hey, Christy. Glad to have you with us. So, again, just expanding your view of the role that the AI is going to play in your life or in your business, whatever it is. So, what AI is not, I think, and where it doesn't quite measure up to humans and what we're capable of doing is that it's not really something that has a real three-dimensional experience, right? It can know a lot about experiences through data and the internet, but it's not actually out here in the world engaging yet. We'll see how far that goes in the future. It's not just like a task robot. So there's been lots of automated software in the past. AI is far beyond just a task robot or an automated piece of software, right? It's not always knowledgeable about your brand and your needs in the beginning. It might be able to glean things from online, but the truth is there's a lot of other things underneath what you're presenting to the public that build up your brand and really speak to what it's about. And so that's where AI needs you to infuse that, right? It's not actually talking to your customers or your clients or your donors. It's not actually connected to your community in a real three-dimensional way, right? So at the end of the day, we have to teach AI those things. And the more that we teach it those things, the better it's going to perform. So it's about that relational understanding that we actually bring to the AI that makes it get better and better at what it's doing and therefore gets better and better at helping us accomplish our goals. So, I want to go over a few things about how to talk to AI. I think this is one of the key components of leveling up. And this is where I think I was able to jump into using AI on a more front end level because I've always used AI on the back end, right? As a search engine optimization professional, AI was part of my understanding of my job, probably since around 2010. But when we started interacting with it in more of a chatbot perspective and AI was able to more have a conversation with us and do different things for us, I started to realize quickly that the fact that I'm a very loquacious, detailed communicator is of benefit to me, right? So right away, I realized, oh, my obsession with the details and the information and providing everything that someone or something needs to know is actually really beneficial because the AI responds to that level of detail and that level of conversation. And this can be transferred into prompt engineering or writing more sort of academic prompts or technical prompts. But I do think in some ways it's actually great to think about how we're combining that understanding of technical prompting with conversational interaction with the AI. So I'm always going to approach it more from a conversational perspective and really build out frameworks for it rather than getting into that techie or really academic programming perspective. That's not to say that's not valuable. And if you want to explore that, you should do that. But you'll notice my examples are more about just digging into the details and really being a great communicator with the AI as a regular person, as a leader in your company or a person who is the most knowledgeable about your products and services. So when we talk to AI, we really want to think about, does it have everything it needs to generate the result or the output that we want, right? So in the beginning, I'm always going to talk about, who am I? Who is my brand? What is our image, our voice, our tone? What is our mission and vision? Who are our audiences, right? And actually upload examples. So I might share our employee handbook, our resource guide. I might share a ton of different past social media posts that we've done. I might share a number of different blog posts that we've written that are the most popular, right? I might share ebooks that I've done. I might share internal documentation about what types of products and services we offer. So again, not just thinking about all that content we put out on the front end, but what back end content, operational and administrative content can benefit the AI to understand who we are. And then once we tell the AI who we are, we need to tell it who we want the AI to be, right? So we want to be able to say, hey, I need you to play the role of HR manager. I need you to play the role of social media manager. I need you to play the role of an inventory manager, right? I need you to play a role in my business and to help me strategize around something. And you can even give it more detail. So you can say, I want you to put our customers first. I want you to look at our sales reports from the last 6 months, identify the top few services, and then help me make a plan, right? About how we're going to sell more of those services in the future. I want you to focus on these outcomes. I want you to focus on these values, right? So that eventually what happens over time is the AI starts to really understand how you do your job and how it can begin to do its job in great alignment with what you are doing, right? Now, again, ideally, if you're using something like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Claude, Meta AI, any of those things, then hopefully you're also organizing these conversations in your system. So once you give AI this information, you can keep going back and asking it to refer to that information for every single thing that it does. Good example would be if you're using ChatGPT, you can create a project. Inside of that project, you can upload all sorts of different assets, like I discussed. And so that's where you're able to genuinely start a project for, redesigning and optimizing your website and using that same thread over and over and giving it all of the information it needs to just get better and better at helping you with that project. You might have multiple projects, you might have multiple threads, whatever it is. But the truth is, you don't always have to re upload all of this, right? Depending on how you organize yourself in the system. The next things that you want to do when you're talking to AI is you not only want to tell it what role it's playing, but how do you want it to approach the problem or the questions or the work, right? So, a good example for me is in teaching with Learn Tourism. A big part of our focus and our values is empathy in education, right? So, anytime that I'm working on something with the I want to remind them because I've already shared some of that content that we've created around that and our concepts around it to really remind it that's a core component of what we do. And so everything should have that foundation of empathy, understanding different learning styles, understanding that people have different abilities and ways that they can engage to learn. And so how can we make sure that I'm not, stuck in my own mindset or my own silo? And then from there, we want to explain to the AI what is the goal of our conversation. So, what is the outcome or what is the output? What is the thing we want them to deliver at the end, right? So, this is a world where, again, you're training a team member, they can have deliverables. What are those things that you want it to create for you? And if you have examples of something that someone else has done, or you have a framework that you've learned in a class, or you know that a competitor is doing something a certain way, you can share those links, you can share PDFs, you can share all sorts of things to help it understand this is what I want you to produce at the end. When it comes to making yourself more efficient and having AI help you with workflows, this is where this part of your conversation with the AI is incredibly important, right? Because if you don't direct it, it'll take a lot of leeway in coming up with ideas for you. And sometimes ideas are what you want if you're not sure which direction you should go, right? You can brainstorm easily with these tools. But sometimes you already know what the outcome or the output needs to be. And so you're asking it actually, again, to align with what you're already doing and to help you do that thing in a better way, not to reinvent the wheel. And then lastly, a step that I think lots of people forget, myself included, I actually have a little reminder that tells me when I'm working with I need to ask it questions about what do I need to avoid? What do I need to keep? And I need it to answer those same questions, right? So I might be like, hey, I have this idea. I have this workflow. This is how I've been doing it. Do you think this is the best way to do it? Are there other ways to do it? What am I not considering? What am I missing from this conversation? How would other people disagree with my approach? Is there ways I can improve? And also, I need to say to the AI, hey, I want you to avoid doing this. I don't want you to include this. I'd like you to ignore this particular approach that I know is common in our industry, but it's not the way that we do it. So, again, this goes back to mission, vision, values, and collaborating on that and just helping the AI to understand not just what to do, but what not to do. And also helping the AI give you a perspective of things that you might just not have considered. So, again, as someone who's educating on a regular basis, I found this suggestion in the very beginning so useful because there are some things about, let's say, the way that I teach marketing that isn't very conventional. And so I don't want the AI to bring these conventional corporate ideas into what I'm saying if they're really not aligned with my approach or my perspective. And I also want to make sure that when I'm educating people on different things, I don't forget to cover certain areas or topics, that I don't just talk from a place of bias. And so I can ask the AI to help me work that out. So again, these are just a simple frameworks that you can use anytime you're engaging, especially with chatbots. Like I said, Meta AI, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude. These are great sort of points to have in every conversation that you're having with them. And then I think always having that mind for quality control. There's lots of different things that kind of you'll naturally see as you're getting better and better at using AI. One is live iteration. So actually like seeing this as a conversation, right? Seeing this as a back and forth, not as something where you just write a sentence and it goes and does the work, but more that you start this conversation, that conversation continues. If you notice that it's not doing things the way you want, that you say that. I even tell it sometimes, hey, this thing is not working. I do this with ChatGPT a lot. I'm like, hey, you gave me this result, but it's not working correctly. Could you tell me why it's not working? Sometimes it'll say, I just can't do this right now. I'll literally tell it, you need to tell your engineers that this isn't functioning, which is making it impossible for me to complete this task that I need to complete or this project that I want to complete. And it'll go and report back. So, really having that live iteration, keeping the conversation going even when you want to correct it, redirect it. Accuracy habits. So again, really telling it, don't make up quotes, don't make up hours, don't make up things like that. Or maybe sometimes you'll see AI drops a lot of emojis into something. Don't use those emojis. Here's the emojis we're comfortable using. Don't say things that can't be sourced. I often, as an educator, have to ask the AI to source the information so I can go and quality control that's what it's telling me is based on a real study that's actually credible and verifiable. I think quotes are one of the biggest things you'll notice. It will automatically make up stuff, right? When you ask it to quote somebody. So we don't want it to do that. So really teaching it to have those self checks will be helpful. And then if you're working with a team, I really like having an accept and reject log, especially if there's multiple people that are actually doing something similar or working together on different workflows and projects and jobs. This is where we see, hey, this is the prompts I was using. These ones were great. These ones didn't really work. And that sort of helps all of us learn and get better at training the system. And Sarah, I see your question that you have a paid ChatGPT account and you've trained it on your brand and you've set up different GPTs for different departments. And you've been catching a lot of mistakes lately, really big ones. For example, it told you how to set up a meta ad wrong the other day and it kept sending you in circles to fix it, but would never admit it was wrong. So, how do I handle this type of situation? So, this is a great question because this is, I think, an excellent example of the hallucinating factor that we have to deal with. And ChatGPT, if I'm totally honest with you all, when ChatGPT first came out, it really was leading the way. But I would actually say that Gemini is starting to surpass ChatGPT quite a bit. Not for every single thing, but there are a lot of things where Google maybe held back a little bit. They were a little slower to bring their chatbot out. If you all remember, they had a big mistake with their AI overviews in the beginning, which was really embarrassing for them. So they put out this AI, then it made a mistake. I don't know if anybody can remember it. Pop it in the chat. But that mistake caused them to pull back while ChatGPT just ran forward. I think Google went back and said, hey, we've got the largest access to data in the world because we have been building the largest data centers for the last 25 years. So we're going to go back, we're going to refine things. And then they brought it back out. And now it's doing really well. And there's a lot less mistakes. So you're going to see the ebbs and flows of this simply because, again, AI still can hallucinate and make things up on its own without anybody's permission. So the suggestions I'm going to make is one, potentially cross check what you're doing in ChatGPT with something like Gemini. So oftentimes when I have a problem with one AI tool, I just take everything, I copy and paste whatever I'm working on, I drop it into the other AI tool, and I'm like, figure out what's going wrong here. And when I do that, it's really helpful. I also use Copilot for the same thing because I have a Microsoft account. So sometimes I'll go between ChatGPT and Copilot. And you start to see once you start doing this kind of comparison where you get the best results. With ChatGPT, also, I'm finding a few different things. One, check which version of ChatGPT you're using. Even in the paid, you get to select which version of the bot you're using, right? I think sometimes it's like the thinking bot, sometimes it's the faster bot, sometimes it's the deep research bot. Sometimes, because I'm an expert in meta advertising, sometimes I need to do the deep research because meta advertising is hard and their documentation is often behind, very behind what they're doing. And so I really needed to take the extra time required to dig into everything it can find about those things. The other thing is that a lot of times AI is not necessarily connected directly to the live internet. So that's why it needs the data centers, right? So those data centers are pulling in all sorts of information. And then the bot has access to them, like what is almost live, but is like really recent. I think sometimes right now what's happening is platforms, like advertising platforms especially, are updating really quickly. And so just switching those different things and seeing if that helps. I also will switch browsers. I will also clear my history and refresh the browser. I will do those kind of technical things that are often an issue. And sometimes that'll solve the problem with ChatGPT. But I'm sorry it's having those problems because I am seeing it too. You are not alone. It's making a lot of mistakes, and sometimes it seems to not want to admit it. Sometimes I'll create a new chat as well and copy and paste everything and start over and say to it in the beginning, in another thread, you've been making these mistakes and I don't understand why. Could you go back over this information and help me again? Right. So rather than just continuing that sort of stressfulness in the same thread, I'm going to start to make a shift in some direction. So start a new thread, refresh my browser, change that ChatGPT version, or potentially just go to Gemini, go to Copilot. There are free versions of those. So you can potentially, if you don't pay for those, just use the free versions. You still might get some great feedback. But great question. I really appreciate that. So I want to show you some examples of what I'm talking about. If you have your phone, you can grab this QR code and go and actually take a look at this page that I've built that has all these different prompts that you can use. But I think they're great examples of how you talk to the AI, and each one is solving a problem. There's even a set of 6 prompts that each one solves an individual marketing problem, but all of the prompts together solve the problem of actually creating a digital marketing plan. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that really quick, just because I want you to see how this works. And I'm just going to reshare so we make sure we have the right tab open. All right, so you should see I've created this page that you can go to. And again, that QR code will be in the slides as well as the link. And at the very top, I've created these example prompts. And again, I think these are great examples of what you can do to practice creating your own strategic prompts when you start conversations. And I just took all of the principles I just shared with you and I created 2 examples that are not marketing because I think we get stuck sometimes on AI being about marketing. It's actually about so much more. So here you can see an operational workflow optimization prompt. And so this is where I explain who I am, right? What our mission is, what I would like the AI, what role I would like it to play, who I would like it to be. I give it our current workflow, right? How the customer connects with us and how the team responds. And then I ask it to solve these particular problems or answer these particular questions. I tell it what to avoid. And then I ask it to feedback with me about what I might be missing or what I'm not seeing, right? I also created one for reducing staff burnout, right? From an HR perspective. So again, same process, right? If you take those steps that I gave you and basically outline them, it's like, who am I? Who are you? What are we trying to focus on? What do I need you to suggest? Right? So again, these can be more detailed or less detailed on the depending on the goal that you're trying to accomplish. The rest of this awesome page takes what we just talked about again and gives you actual prompts that you can copy and paste and just plug in information. So I've put together really simple prompts for things like customer service, marketing prompts, design prompts, operations prompts. And again, you can literally just copy and paste these. And inside of the brackets, that's where you would add your own details, right? and then training prompts for how to learn things. And then below that, you have my digital marketing prompt series. So this is where I've taken the same basic practice and I've put together 6 different prompts, one to create a brand style guide, one to do competitive research, one to analyze your Google Analytics, one to analyze your meta insights, one to put together a 90-day content marketing strategy, and one to optimize pages of your website. And again, if you click on any of these, I just give you the instructions, right? And you'll see here is where you're going to replace the things in bold and brackets with your own information. A lot of these as well will allow you to include essentially uploaded files. So let's say you export a spreadsheet from Meta Insights, you export a spreadsheet from Google Analytics or from your CRM, right? Or from your sales reports. Maybe you have an e-commerce website, you pull your sales reports. You can upload those things so that it will reference those while it's following your prompt. And the other thing I want to say based on the question that I just answered for Sarah is it's really important to tell it only to use the data that you've provided. So if you're going to upload things, reference those files, tell it what you want it to do with those files. Sometimes even tell it, I want you to answer my questions and complete this prompt by only referring to the information that I've shared with you. Here's a list of files, right? So that way we can ask it to narrow its view, doesn't just start making stuff up or pulling from stuff it's learned on the internet and things like that. So again, these are just a way for you to take what I said and put it into actual practice, which I think is really valuable. And again, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A or the chat, and I will keep watching that because I know a couple other people have joined us today. So welcome, welcome. But we're going to continue through talking about this stuff. And again, if you want to go back to prompts before we wrap up, feel free to drop those questions in and I will take a look at those. I think what you'll see when you dig into these prompts and you think about what I'm sharing around talking to the AI, it's about not asking AI just to complete a task, write a social media post, edit an email, create a team building exercise. Ask it to think and strategize with you, right? So again, treat it like a team member. Treat it like somebody who's going to contribute and you're going to contribute and you're going to create something in collaboration. So really ask it to think, ask it to work, ask it to go deeper. Otherwise, it'll just skim the surface, which might not be what you want, right? And I see that question, Sarah. What's your preferred AI for creating images and especially good at using our branding for product photos and images? So great question again. So first I want to say none of them are good at using your branding or product photos and images, in my opinion. Like that's just me as a longtime marketing branding person. I am not always happy with the result. There's been a lot of issues with putting text on things. It'll make up text. There's lots of issues where I'll give it photos of the skyline of Asheville here in North Carolina, where I live, and it'll give me back something that has the Empire State Building in our skyline, which is not real, right? So that's really, I think, a problem. And I think that's going to get better and better over time. But right now, I'm still using things like Canva and Adobe products because their AI is making it easier to design, but I still have total control, right, over what we're using. And working in travel and tourism, that's especially important because you don't want to make up stuff about the destination or the community that you live in. That being said, Google is winning right now. If you haven't tested Google's Nano Banana, which is part of Gemini when you want to create images, that is your best bet for testing and seeing if it can get somewhere close to what you want and be as detailed as possible. You'll notice that graphic designers get better results out of that tool because they know how to speak in technical terms to the AI. When you do that with Google, it actually gets really close, right? So when you give it hex codes for the colors, when you upload images, when you do different things, it'll get better and better the more detailed you are and the more technical you are. If you need help writing the prompt, you can sometimes even ask Google to help you write the prompt, or you could have ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude write the prompt and then go put it into Google, ask it to refine the prompt even more and see if you can get that imagery where you need it to be. But I will say from a branding perspective, it's still hard because it's imperfect. And then Tanya, I see your question. Is there any dictation, voice to text app or program you recommend using with AI for collaborating on writing a blog post? So I'm going to ask everyone here to feedback with that. If anybody's using dictation or voice to text, I am not using something that's just like a simple app for that. I use a tool called Descript, and Descript allows me to upload, I can record directly into it, video and audio. And so Descript allows me to do anything I want. It'll help me create blog posts, social media, videos of any kind, audio of any kind. It's got all sorts of templates built in. And so I love that tool because it's doing what you suggested, but it's not as simple kind of voice to text. And then also, I've never used it on a phone. I use it exclusively on my laptop because it's a pretty robust tool. And then, yeah, Jenny, thanks. Descript is great. And then, Diane, I see your question. Are AI agents safe to create? Could you maybe give me a little more information about what you mean by AI agents? I'm not exactly sure. AI agents, I know what they are, but when you say create them, what exactly does that mean? I'm glad to talk about that in just a minute. And again, if you have a recommendation, anyone here for Tanya on voice to text app or program you're using for to collaborate with AI that's maybe simpler, something you could do on your phone, please share that in the chat. Yeah, and Diane, I see your comment on Claw. I'm actually not familiar with Claw. In my opinion, AI has serious issues all around. So if you listen to AI safety people, I'm not sure we can say anything is safe, right? Especially if we're creating something like an AI agent is a little bit different than where we're at right now with generative AI. So to me, I think that when we're thinking about AI safety, the number one place I go, and Jenny, you just nailed it, is Claude. So Claude, of course, everybody's questionable. There's questions about all the different AI companies, but Claude is definitely working harder. I think Anthropic is the company that created Claude. They are definitely better than, let's say, ChatGPT, in my opinion, or Google or Meta, especially. I think Meta and ChatGPT, in my opinion, are the least safe. Some people might argue with me about that, but I feel like they have the least amount of kind of care about certain things, whereas Claude and Anthropic seem to be caring more. I think Google's caring a little bit more. Microsoft and Copilot's caring a little bit more because Microsoft and Google especially work with businesses through Workspace, Microsoft Office 365, things like that, Microsoft Teams. So they have better policies when you look at what they're actually promising. But yeah, I think it's hard to say that anything is safe. I have created some great, which is not really AI agents, but I have created some great custom gems, custom GPTs to solve different purposes, which were mentioned earlier. So I think that's a different part, which there is a lot of safety in that, depending on what kind of information you're giving it. And then Jody, thank you. You use Gemini Live on your phone to brainstorm and for voice to text purposes. So Tanya, you might check out Gemini Live. That's a great idea. Thank you for mentioning that. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about choosing tools and just kind of how we think about AI again in the spirit of leveling up. How do we get better at it? There's a couple things just to think about here. One is not all tools are built for the same job. So if you are talking to people like myself that are using AI on a daily, what I think a lot of us realize is right now it's important, especially if you have leaders above you that are making decisions about what you can access, that you figure out how you get access to more than one thing because of the safety and accuracy issues that we're having. We don't necessarily want to rely on one tool, especially when it comes to chatbots. So like I said, my CEO, Steven at Learn Tourism, he has paid for a number of different chatbots and he's allowing the team to use them in different ways and then feedback about what's working. And so that way we're getting better and better at figuring out where we should spend our time and which projects, which tasks, which workflows are best in certain things versus others, right? I also think it's important to really categorize the problems that you want to solve. So there might be human resources problems, there might be marketing problems, there might be operations problems, there might be sales problems. And then inside of those, there's going to be even more specific things like you see here. For generative writing, ChatGPT still does a great job. I still use it a lot for my educational content, my presentations, and things like that. Just because I feel like when it helps me flush out in my voice what I want it to do. I've been using it for so long, it's really good at that. But then when I'm doing more SEO or Google Ads strategy, I tend to go to Gemini, right? If I have different pieces of software and I want to flow some things together, the tool Zapier has integrated a lot of AI, right? And so that's a great tool for figuring out how do we take three different softwares and make them work together? Is that even possible? In your customer relationship management tools, or if you have an e-commerce sales system, if you have something attached to the Square in your coffee shop and it's tracking out all of the sales and which things you're selling on a regular basis. All of those things, you can really think about how AI can help you analyze that information, strategize for the future, do different things like that. Design analytics, again, I really want to think about what is it that I need help with? What is it that I need to make more efficient? What is taking me too much time? And then I want to choose tools that are going to meet those needs. And that being said, the next most important thing is you might not need a new tool, right? So before you start buying other AI tools and paying for tools that are out there that are new or trendy or whatever it is, I feel like ChatGPT did that right. They convinced a lot of people because they came out first to start paying them. But the truth is that really what you need. Because if you're already paying for Google Workspace, you have Gemini. If you're already paying for Microsoft, you have Copilot, right? And you have more advanced and protected versions of them. If you have a CRM, like we use HubSpot or maybe something like Monday.com, they're building an AI and it's growing. If you have accounting software, if you have social media accounts, Meta Business Suite is adding more and more AI into the back end, right? To help make managing Meta Business Suite easier. All of these things, time tracking tools so that you know when people are working and how many hours they worked this week. Even if you have contractors or employees, there's different things you can do now to really get a perspective on that stuff without having to go and pay for another tool. So always look at what you have available now and see if what they're developing on that end can help you solve some of those problems first. So again, the biggest leap we can make in leveling up our AI use is being more strategic. So as we wrap up, I want to encourage everyone, drop any final questions that you have into the Q&A, and I'm glad to answer them. But I just want to go over some basic things that you can implement today, right? So AI doesn't really save time when you're using it randomly, when you're not tracking out the results and refining your prompts and getting better and better at it, and really kind of building that relationship, right? But it does save time when it can help you improve a process or a workflow. It really helps save time when it reduces repetitive decision making. So figuring out like, oh, I've already talked about this. I've already answered it. I already have a way to deal with that. This is especially something you'll see in email programs. So Gmail is starting to provide a lot more things in their system with AI to make it easier and faster for you to respond to things. And AI is really time saving when it helps strengthen the quality control process. So the more that you train it to work on a process, an issue, a workflow, the better it's going to get over time. And that's why it's valuable to choose a focus for that AI and keep using it, right? Again, this is just a quick framework you can always use when you're thinking about problem solving or accomplishing a goal. How can I choose my tools? Here's some questions you can ask yourself, a little process you can put together, and you might even do that as a team. And I see that question, Jenny. I will be right back there in a moment. And then I've put together some common use cases of AI just for all of you to explore as your homework. So I do want you to just remember, I'd love for you to step into leadership, create policies around what you're doing, think about how your industry and your community are going to be affected, be curious, right? And care about privacy, security, and protecting folks. But no matter how you feel about the tools, your opinion is really welcome. And you're going to find that where most people are implementing this stuff is in things like customer service, marketing, design, operations, and training. And so again, you have prompts, simple prompts that go with these use cases. And so I just want to encourage you to dive into these and actually start thinking about where do you want to begin? What's one thing you can do, right? Where is one part of what you're working on as a business or as a professional where you know you need help? And when it comes to learning new things, I want to turn you on to something called Google's Notebook LM. It's a really amazing tool that you can dig into to help you learn things more quickly and to learn in a way that's really useful for you, whether you want to learn through video, audio, written text, whatever it is. So I want to answer these questions. Again, you'll have some additional homework in here because I know we're right at the top of the hour. I don't want to stay here for too much extra time because we all have to get back to work. But again, keep an eye on SEO and what's happening, right? Also, ChatGPT, Microsoft owns Bing, right? Meta AI with Facebook and Instagram. They're all making a play for search. Discoverability of your website is going to change a lot in the next year or two. It's already changing, right? Your website, if you have a website, it's really valuable right now to have a web designer that you work with that you can ask questions to. I think it's incredibly important to have a more technical person at this point to help you upgrade your website as these changes start to happen. Create AI policies like I talked about. Again, if you'd like some examples, feel free to reach out to me. And if you want more information about AI ethics, I'm just going to tell you to go and really pay attention to what's coming out of the Center for Humane Technology. Tristan Harris is one of the founders. He is one of my biggest, I mean, we don't know each other, but I consider him a mentor as we go into this new world. I think it's really important to think about the relational aspects of how humans and AI will come together. And he has really taken the lead in this conversation. Their organization is made up of all sorts of programmers and designers and computer folks that created social media tools and have been working in AI for quite a long time. So again, if this was useful to you, I'm going to keep answering questions. Feel free to drop them in. But if you want to just give me some feedback on what you thought about this presentation, you can use that QR code. I'd really appreciate this. I'll also include this on Friday. So if you want to give me feedback, then you can. I'll be doing future webinars on AI. So if there's something I didn't cover, like Diane, your question about agents, that's a very big question that I felt I don't quite have time to dig into that because agents is the new, we're going from generative to agentic. That's what we're going to see this year in 2026. If you want more resources about that, feel free to email me, sarah@learntourism.org. But Jenny, I see your comment about trying to be ADA compliant with the website, like alt text, etc. Is there anything out there that can help you with that? I will say Gemini is my favorite thing to use for those types of things. Again, Gemini is really good for optimizing your website. Google has been the leader in optimization and in search for 25 years. It's extremely knowledgeable about ADA compliance. You do want to quality control whatever it tells you there, but I think Gemini is super helpful in creating all sorts of metadata, creating all sorts of alt tags, even digging into Gemini to create potential schema and markups, although you probably will need your web designer to help with that or your web developer if you want to implement it. But it can help you put a lot of that bulky work of organizing things together. And so I highly suggest that. And then I see, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correct, but you mentioned Whisperflow AI. So yeah, Whisperflow is pretty cool. I would definitely check that out as well. They're doing lots of cool things. So again, you might not need an extra tool, but again, there's lots of cool tools out there. Descript, we've mentioned, Whisper, I would definitely check those out. But again, hey, thanks, Diane. Thanks, Keith. Thank you, Bria, Christy, Kim. So glad to have you all here. I really appreciate it. Again, if there's any final questions, I'm glad to stay here for a few more minutes just to make sure there wasn't anything burning that you wanted to ask me. But I really appreciate you all taking the time to join me today for lunch. And like I said, if you walk away with nothing else, I want to encourage everyone to please take leadership in this conversation. I've been debating with lots of folks about the importance of having pushback, the importance of having questions, the importance of having naysayers, because I think that's the only way that AI is actually going to serve the people. And at the end of the day, what happens with AI is like what happened with social media. People, the regular people of the world that use those tools, those of us that go to work every day and implement these things, we are the ones that give the power to all the people at the top, right? So tech companies, CEOs, the people at the top are not the ones with the power in this situation. They may be building the tech, they might have the engineers on staff, but the only way they get the power and the money is when we actually adopt what they're giving us. And so it is our duty in some ways to ask questions, to push back, to demand better, right? And to request that what we do with this technology really uplift people, really elevate people, really protect the environment. There's so much potential for what we could do. And so let's really invest ourselves in our better angels and invest ourselves in optimism and invest ourselves in speaking truth to power when it's important. And we don't have to be technical to do that. We don't have to be the people who built the AI to do that. We're the people that have to live with the AI, and we're the people that are going to have to use it every day. Just keep that in mind going forward. All opinions are welcome at this table. Don't let anybody tell you any different. And again, thanks for the extra 5 minutes, and I hope you all have a really great day. And keep an eye out for emails from me, and I hope to see you at our next Learn Tourism Talks webinar. Thank you so much.